Hey, how's it going? Tonight, talking about the Korg NTS-1. Oh, sorry, my glasses are fogging up here. It's been a hot one in British Columbia here in Victoria the last couple of weeks. We just got through that heat dome that hit us, and it's still, 30 degrees outside, and I'm sitting in the basement where it is cooler. But yeah, as you can see, my glasses may fog up as I, I film here just because it's still a little hot. But what the heck is this thing? I got this, thankfully I was lucky enough to get this for my birthday. It was around, a couple months ago, and I've been playing with it since, doing this silly background music you're hearing right now is, I recorded some MIDI tracks onto this guy, and, recorded a whole bunch of layers to really run this through its paces to try to see what I could get out of it. And I was pleasantly surprised. But if you're not familiar with what this is I kind of like to compare it to, the Swiss Army knife, as silly as that is, of the synth world, right? Like, the Swiss Army knife, it's handy. If you're out camping or you're somewhere you don't want to bring a lot of tools, you're never going to use this as the primary wine opener. But if you don't have a wine opener, it will do. If you got to do some emergency dental work, well, you might want a proper toothbrush, or this. Oh my God, this looks disgusting. I'm not sure what's on there, black mold or what. That is gross. So maybe you don't want to be using this. Something's on the back there. Sorry, that's gross. Don't use that. I think that might give you a disease. But so that's. Don't worry. The NTS-1 doesn't have any black mold. But hey, you need a screwdriver. You get the idea, right? Or you gotta solve a mystery or look at something in depth. I don't know why you would ever need a magnifying glass on a Swiss Army knife. But anyway, I like to think of this as kind of the Swiss Army knife of the synth world. It has oscillator on it, like a digital oscillator that can do a whole bunch of different things. In fact, it shares the log. So basically I don't have a mini log or a pro log, but I believe they're analog digital synths, and I think they have kind of analog engines, but this shares the same digital engine that is on the mini log and pro log for both the oscillator and the effects. And the nice thing about that is there is a log SDK or system development kit that if you are a programmer, you can go in there and make your own oscillators and effects, or you can also just grab other people's work that have made oscillators and effects for this and the other Log devices for free, and take what they've done and load it on here, which we'll cover in a little bit. So at the end of the day, what is it? Well, it's a mini synth. When I first saw this, I wasn't sure if it was much more than a fancy monotron or whatever those things are called, or if it was actually a proper synth. I could tell you it is a proper synth. It has an oscillator to begin with. I think it has like a saw, a triangle, and then a square digital oscillators, and also a wave, which I think is kind of like the wave synthesis on here, and then also kind of an FM thing they have going on here too. It's not pure FM, but it's some sort of FM attempt that comes with that. And so you got a basically synth with a ribbon keyboard that really sucks, and it comes with some cool effects too. So and the effects, the nice thing about the effects, they work with the oscillator synth on here, but you can also on the back here, there's an audio input that you can hook audio from your other synths or other sound sources and use the effects on here with that, which is really cool multi-effects pedal for a relatively pretty cheap price, considering I've shown on my channel before those Chinese kind of $30-40 pedals. Well, for $120 Canadian, you can get a nice multi-effects pedal, which makes me a little the Zoya is my main multi-effects pedal I have for my main setup back here, but I kind of wish I found about this first, because I might have saved a little bit of money there. The Zoya does a lot more, but it's also not as immediate and as easy as this either. Anyways, enough of an intro. I think that covers it, and let's get into kind of done already, but these YouTube channels out there, I like to watch them too about synths and stuff, and I always find when I watch them, I feel like I need to go buy, like, oh, that's so cool, I need it. So the one thing I want to do here is, before I try to sell this to you or make you want to go out and buy one immediately, let's talk about the things. Oh my god, it's hot and I need a haircut. One of the things I'd like to do is go over the things I don't like about it first, or some reasons why you might not want to add this to your collection of synths or your current setup. Just to help you out there, just before you immediately go get your gas going and go buy this from your local music shop or your online store. So let's cover the things I don't like about the Korg NTS-1 here first. Alright, so let's talk about the negatives, or the things I don't like about this NTS-1 so much. So the first thing that bugs me is the build quality, and leads me to wonder about its reliability. So you actually build this thing yourself, and it's the building it isn't too hard, but you can see, you know, it's not a fully fledged build. It reminds me kind of like a pocket operator so much, where a lot of the circuitry exposed. In fact, even in the manual it tells you don't touch these things, these exposed. I'm not even sure what it is. I'm not an electrical engineer, but you know, those it says don't touch. You can short out the synth or cause issues with it. The other thing is it's pretty flimsy. It's light. It doesn't feel like it's going to take much of a hit at all. So yeah, it's cheap, but you know, even when things are cheap, you'd like them to be built, you know, sort of some ruggability built into them, and this feels like a toy. It feels plasticky. You know, if I push here, it flexes in. It doesn't feel like this is going to take much of a hit and survive. So there, you can buy third-party cases, or if you have a 3D printer, if an operational 3D printer, I should say, mine's needs a little bit of a service, but you know, if you have a 3D printer, there is files out there to allow you to build your own cases for this, or your, you know, things that can go, you know, these screws can come out and you can screw a plastic layer on top of it to give it a bit more protection. And there is third-party companies that will sell those to you, that are then, you know, for, it seems about, like, I saw some online for like £20. It seemed to be out of the Europe there. So you know, it's not going to break the bank, but you know, just the base as is, it leaves a bit to be desired there on the build quality. Beyond that, there's no power button, and that was is kind of annoying, right? So in order to, you know, reset this thing or to turn it off and on, you have to either yank the USB cable out the back there, or you have to yank the other end out of the power source. So that's the only way to turn this thing on and off. So there's nowhere on here is a power button that will actually turn it off and on. You actually have to yank the power cord or the USB cord to do that. The other thing is it has Volca-like limitations for the inputs and outputs. So if we look at the back here, you can see we have a sync in and out, and it works similar. If you're familiar with the Volca range, basically I think there's like some sort of audio cable that goes in there, and the pulse it will send will sync the tempo. The nice thing is the MIDI, you can also send tempo by MIDI, so that's what I've been doing. And you know, the audio in, but these are all, you know, they're not proper quarter-inch audio inputs or outputs. They're all 3.5 millimeter kind of headphone jacks, and the actual main audio out on the front is a headphone jack as well. So very similar to the Volcas, you know, fine enough. You know, you can get cables like this one here. Give me a sec to go into my cable bin here. You know, you can get, hopefully this is the right cable. You can get, you know, like one of these, which is your typical 3.5 millimeter headphone jack that can go out to a proper left-right quarter-inch outputs. So those are very handy for this and the Volcas, to have this play nice, either to bring audio in that maybe has quarter-inch outputs, or to send the audio from the NTS-1 to your audio interface, or wherever you're wanting it to go, if it's not just the headphones that you're wearing. So, the other things I want to talk about, what I don't like about this, let's go ahead and let's plug it in to an audio interface and get it fired up, so I can show you some of the other things that bug me, or that I don't like so much about this synth. All right, you still with me here? So now we got this guy hooked up into my audio interface, so we should hear it. Beautiful, and you can see the the one thing I don't like about this thing already. It's basically, you know, without a proper MIDI controller, it's very hard that, you know, if I want to just play. It's kind of doable to play a minor and major scale. I feel like I'm gonna break it because it's kind of not stable because the headphone jack. So out lifting it up on the table here. Anyways, so that's one thing that I don't like about it either. Is this thing is really the only way I find this usable is when I latch the ARP and then use it as a way to control the ARP. So that's another thing I don't like about it is the ribbon controller. But you know, it is what it is for the price you pay. So the other thing I don't love about this thing is it would really benefit from a way to do some patch storage or patch saving. So for example, you know, you take some time to dial in a cool sound, right? Just latch that on for a second. Whatever, you get the idea, right? So you come up with something that you like. Well, there's no way to save this, right? And, you know, you can even go more complicated, but there's no way you can keep track of what the settings are for each of these either, right? Like when I move this, there's no number that shows me. So even if I was ambitious enough to have a workbook to record all these configurations exactly, I'm not going to be able to even manually dial it in. And even if I did, it'd be a pain in the ass to go through everything to save it. So it's a very immediate instrument, but let me turn that off before it drives you nuts. Oh, Jesus. Stop! Alright, what have I done here? There we go. And that's the other thing, is the controls. I was actually going to get to the controls can be a bit awkward, you know. It's not like your typical knob per function synth. You've got to go through all these menus to get to everything, and then it's hard to tell what everything's set to without going in there and twisting things around to try to get a sense for it. So those are the other two things I don't love about this. So if you're in a band or if you're trying to have an instrument that you can just fire up, and if you like to do sound design like myself and come up with these cool sounds, well, they're temporary. As soon as you yank the power on it, right? And this is what sometimes you have to do if you get into a situation like the one before. If you get it to it where it won't do what you want it to do, or if you lost where your settings are, you gotta yank the power out, plug it back in, and then you are just back to kind of the default saw sound. And once again, what we just developed is gone. You know, I can try to put it back together. I won't bother, but I could probably do something simple like that. But you know, if it screws up or you have a power hiccup or, you know, shit happens, you're going to be out of luck, right? Because so even when I was making some of the background songs you hear now, I was almost had a sound dialed in, or had something really I was happy with, but then it would flip up. And that's one thing I want to demo to you now is when I was running MIDI tracks into this thing, sometimes the MIDI notes, and it wasn't just this one MIDI track I was using, it was across 3 different tracks by 3 different people. Once in a while a MIDI note would come in and it would confuse this thing, and it would just be stuck where it was just basically blaring it out nonstop. I couldn't choke it off. Even if I changed, you know, the envelope or settings, I couldn't get it to stop. So if anyone knows a way to send a stop message, because some synths usually have a stop button you can kind of double push that will that will kind of kill whatever it's doing. I couldn't find it on here, and the only way I could do it was pull the plug. But of course, when I did that, I would lose the sound I came up with, which was infuriating. Let me show you a demo of that quickly. I got everything all hooked up here into my audio interface where I just gotta get the MIDI going into it from. Just give me a sec. I'll set it up here, and we'll do a quick example. So yeah, like I said, I was having some MIDI issues with some tracks in here. So for example, this StarCraft one I was working on, for some reason or another, when I tried to record these in, and I didn't even end up adding these in, is I would push play here, and hear that? Hear how it's just droning on and on, even if I... So, like, it would get stuck, which was, oh, as I knock everything over here, you know, it would get stuck, and you can't do anything to stop it, right? It's just stuck. So in this case, I'd have to pull the power, put the power back in, and go, which was annoying, especially because when you pull the power, you lose whatever patch you had going on, and you have to start from scratch. So when I spent, 10 minutes to dial in a drum sound and lose it and have to start from scratch, well, I'd go in and I'd delete a note that caused it to screw up, and then another one down the line would do it, and I just gave up on the drum part. So that was one annoying thing I found with the NTS-1. Trust me, I did that about 5 times with this damn thing, and got fed up with the damn thing, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're not having any drums in the in this song, because this was the third of the 3 songs I made with the NTS-1, and at this point I was about ready to throw the NTS-1 out the window because it was causing me great frustration. So while I was happy, some of the other things I've, almost for the Deus Ex one I did, I was about like, man, the sound quality on this thing sucks. Listen to all the feedback. Well, being an idiot that I can be sometimes, when I was using the one of the effects I was using on the NTS-1 was a tape delay. When I would listen to each layer and record it in, sounded fine, but then as I added more and more in, the tape delay gives you that kind of 80s hiss, and I forgot that I had it on. So when you hear that Deus Ex song, you hear this in the background, and once everything kicks in, it's not so bad. But I was like, oh man, this thing, the sound quality on this sucks. But then I'm like, no, the user's just an idiot. When I did the other ones, I didn't use the tape delay and didn't have that problem. Anyways, I think that's enough negativity. Like I said, I like this thing, but like I see on these YouTube videos quite often, everyone always is trying to make things look like the next best thing. And all these audio tools these days are amazing. In fact, you can use a computer and just be just as good, but this hardware is fun too. And I really like this NTS-1, but I just wanted to give you a sober look at it and some of the warts it has and some of the issues in my mind that, at the end of the day, it's $100 US, 120 Canadian, 130 Canadian-ish instrument. You can't expect the world out of it, but before you go in and spend your next month worth of beer money on it, yeah, just be aware that it's not Nirvana. There is some issues of it that drove me nuts when I was trying to do some recordings on it. Hey, do let me know if I'm doing something stupid in Reaper. Maybe it's my idiotic self again that's messing something up there instead of the synth. I would love to know. Just like I do make mistakes. I'm no expert with this stuff yet. I feel like I'm getting better, but I still have a long way to go. But yeah, I just wanted to cover that quickly. But let's get into the stuff I really, really like about this guy. So I mentioned, I believe earlier that well, let's just start off with the basics. For bang for a buck, it's hard to find some physical hardware that really matches up against this. It's cheaper than a Volca, but I would say it's next to the Volca sample. It's probably, I would rather have this than any of the other Volcas for its capabilities it can provide. Just for the FX alone, and even this combined with one of the Volcas really gives you. I figure this is like a force multiplier for those cheaper instruments. The quality of the effects that are within it is very great and very nice. I hooked up my here's some examples of some of the stuff I played around with over the last couple of weeks. Another level of dimension to some of these cheaper, not cheap, you know, Innovation Circuit I wouldn't classify as cheap, but it's no Moog, you know, grandmother or whatever. Insert your expensive synth here, but it really adds a nice dimension to these other this other gear I have, and for the price I got, you know, it's asking for, I think it's a very reasonable amount of money to pay for what you get out of those effects alone. You know, so that's the biggest bang thing here, is the bang for the buck value out of this is excellent. I can't think of anything else that I could spend the amount of money on this thing and get the value for that money. Is how many ways can I say bang for the buck? Let's move on. You know, like I said, it's a force multiplier. And it's also a great, really reasonably priced multi-effects unit. You know, the effects are high quality, and not only are the effects that it comes with high quality, but you can find a lot of cool ones out on, you know, that you can make your own through the Minilog, the Log SDK and whatnot. So you have a lot of effects that you could get going on this thing. Either you self-develop them or go out there and either pay a little bit money for some of the ones that people have developed, or there's lots of free ones out there that I've loaded on there that we'll take a look at later. It's funny. Why do look at my little paperwork I put together here? It's really low cost entry for the same digital oscillator used on the Minilog, plus access to the Log STD customization. So low cost of entry, super cheap, and cheapest chips. So I think you get the message there. It's very reasonably priced, and it's very, for what you pay for it. Like I said, you get good good value out of it. Anyways, essentially the positives of this thing is the functionality you get for the price you pay for it, which is pretty amazing. You know, for the 120 Canadian dollars or 90.99 USD it costs, you know, you get a synth. It has the same digital oscillator that's featured on the Minilog and the Prolog. Now you don't get the poly play out of it. You only get a mono out of it, but it's still you get that for, you know, the price of $120 Canadian versus what a Minilog XD is, what, $800 I think around. You maybe get a bit cheaper, and the Prolog I've seen for $1,200 to $1,600, depending on it's the 8 or 16 poly models. It's not bad for that same digital oscillator featured on there, and it sounds pretty good. You know, for example, it comes with this saw one, which, now let me hook in the key step here. Yeah, what channel I have this set to? I think it's 12. Let's test my memory. Perfect. So that's a lot better than just trying to see if it's got velocity. Yeah, see, it's even got velocity. Picks up velocity on the MIDI controller, so that's cool. Let's see. I'll try to use. Let's just turn the ARP on. It's easier for me to demonstrate the sounds. Triangle. Change the ARP on there so it doesn't drive you completely nuts. What else we got here? So square. And this UPN, I believe, is Korg's kind of take on FM sounds on this thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you kind of get those bells. Trumpets. So you can mess around with A and B here to kind of dial in FM sounds. And this is the waves, which I think is supposed to be some sort of waveform synth. I'm guessing. But yeah, you can see I've also thrown on some custom ones I found online too, and I'll show you how to do this in a little bit as we go through the more, you know, tutorial-ish of this video. So this one's Kane. CC22. This one doesn't seem to do anything there. This is human, so it's supposed to be like a human voice, which might work better. Kind of sounds like like my voice box. So that's kind of fun. And do I have any more? Oh, what is Morpheus? Ooh, what pill do you take? That was really dumb. It's the best I could think of when Morpheus came up. How hack is that? Anyways. Oh yeah, that's Morpheus. Super sheet. Anyways, there you go. So you can see beyond. So by default, the saw, the triangle, the square, this UPN, which is the, I think, FM, and the waves. Those are all oscillators that come with this thing out of the box. And then, yeah, these are some of the free ones I found online the other night and loaded them in there. Yeah, so you can see, and the oscillators are so you got lots of, you know, when you listen to the music I have had going on in the background here, this thing will really sing, you know, you can get a lot of different sounds out of this. I got drum sounds, I got trumpet sounds, I got synth sounds, you know. I was quite pleasantly pleased with the range of sounds this small little guy could produce. I'll move this out of the way so you can see it a bit better. That would be a better presentation, wouldn't it? On the anyway. And let's try some of the effects. So let's come up with a cool sound here. I like that human one. Let's play that human one. That sounded kind of fun. So we got filter. Let's see if I can adjust the release. Or loop it. Alright, I'm getting too crazy here. So let's try. So by default, the mod I think that came of it was this chorus effect. An ensemble effect. Get your choir going on there. Phaser. And a flang or two. And this was a custom one I grabbed. This is a bit crusher, which is seeming to be crushing it a little too much. So you get your bit crusher, and that's not default. That I got that one. Gator. Oh, don't knock everything over here. Kind of fun. And a vibrator, there you go. What does the vibrator do? Hopefully it doesn't shake my desk apart. Alright, that is the vibrator for all your pleasure. The wah-wah. Yeah, so there's some of the mod effects. The delay. So mono delay, stereo delay. Mono, like I showed you. Ping. It goes left to right, kind of there. Hopefully I'm recording in stereo. I'm not, so you're not going to hear it. That was silly. Give me 1 second here. Got the stereo going now. High pass. And the tape. No, this is one I downloaded. That just sounds demonic. Okay. And a looper, so even you can even get a looper going on in here. So you can see how the effects can create some fun little things on here. So that looper is not on by default. That is something I downloaded, but you know, once again, through custom effects beyond the simple delay ones, you can create cool things like loopers on here, and you have a really cheap, you know, not great functionality, but a basic looper that you can do some fun stuff with. And then the reverbs you heard there quickly, you know, you got your basic halls and plates and space. I really like this submarine one, it's kind of fun. You get some really good atmospheric sounds out of the submarine one. I took advantage of this a lot on the Deus Ex song I kind of did. It created some nice, for the strings, okay, that's just annoying. And this is a situation where if you get stuck and you can't turn it off, where I would pull the plug, which can be frustrating when you have a sound you like, right? Like I showed you before, like that's gone now. It's just going to be back to our basic square. But hey, I think that gives you a quick preview of the things I like, and the sounds I like on it. Yeah, let's go ahead, and I think that's enough of the review. Let's get into the tutorial of actually how to use this damn thing. All right. So when you buy this thing, you get the lovely old Korg kind of newspaper manual, and yeah, it will tell you kind of how to do everything, and you know, but let's just go through it in video format for your viewing pleasure. Is that appropriate? Whatever, stupid. So let's start off with the basics. Let's start off with the oscillators. So basically, there's 3 knobs on this thing, and basically there is the type knob. This one's called the type knob, the A knob, and the B knob. And so if you look at the manual, you'll see for each section, if you want to follow along at home, this is what your type knob does for the oscillator section, the filter section, and the envelope section. And for example, the A knob here, but you'll see under this section here, the mode buttons plus A and B. So one of the things to know is if you hold down oscillator and you move this A and B, you get different options than just the regular A and B. So you can see A here controls the shape of the saw wave, and B controls what does it call? It controls the alternate. So basically, each oscillator has a different control through that alternate. So let's go ahead in here and put on the ARP again. Cool. Let's go back oscillator. So yeah, you use the type knob to go through your different oscillator types, but then under each oscillator type you can control, for example, for the shape, and then the alternate control, which is going to be different depending on what oscillator you're using. But the way I like to think of it is I tend to use A and B together to kind of dial in the sound, and if I can't use A and B to find the sound I like, if I can't find the sound I'm aiming for, well, I'll try a different oscillator type. And then if I'm not finding it under different oscillator types, maybe I'll go to the filter and play around with the filter to dial something that I like. But yeah, essentially that's it. So that's all you really need to know for the oscillators is pick your oscillator type. Get the art latched again there. And then you use A to control the shape of the oscillator. And then this alternate is going to be different for each one. Now beyond that, what's under this menu here is you can control the LFO rate. So it depends if the LFO is being used on the sound or not. But this will control how fast the LFO is. So let's see if we can find something that's going to actually make a difference. So if I hold down oscillator here, I can control the frequency of the LFO, right? Additionally, I can control if the LFO is going to mess with the shape. So basically the depth applied to the shape or the pitch. So for example, if I just wanted to mess around with the pitch a little bit, maybe I'll select a little number there, give it a little, so that's the frequency of the LFO wave, how fast it's moving, if it's going. It's a terrible demonstration with my hands, but so here you go, you kind of get that weird sound, right? So let's slow down the frequency, which slows down the wave of the LFO. So you get that kind of Mario sound effect, or Zelda sound effect, or whatever. Now, oops, I am controlling B, which is just the alternate function. I actually have to control down this, and now I can say how much of the pitch I want it to affect, right? So now I cranked up the pitch, so it's much more pronounced, right? Or if I max it out, it's going to go really high. It's really going to mess with the pitch. Or if I just want a slight adjustment, the LFO to just mess with the pitch a little bit. So that's one. So you get the idea, right? So you can either apply the LFO to the pitch of the oscillator, or you can set it to, what is S? S is the shape, so it can affect the wave shape. So let's hardly any effect, don't get much, or maximize that effect. And then I can crank the frequency. So it's another way of controlling your sounds you come up with on the oscillator for your sound design. It's a different tool. So that covers the oscillators. Let's take a look at the filter section. So let's come up with a bit better of a sound than that, just so it doesn't drive me nuts. Cool. All right, so let's go to the filter. So the filter is pretty straightforward for you. So the first off is you can select your filter type from basically a high pass filters, a couple high pass filters there, band pass filters, and low pass filters. So let's just hear the difference of those. Yeah, let's check on the ARP because that's a handy way to hear these in action. Oh, so I can control the cutoff of it and the resonance, not the renaissance. So I made that mistake before. The resonance. That's correct, I hope. And then I can go through these different filters to dial in the exact sound I'm looking for. Not that. Cool. Fun, fun, fun. Okay, so beyond that, with the extra mod controls, you can control how the cutoff sweep sound. And so let's give that a go. Let's just not touch anything yet, and let's just chuck in the ARP again. I shouldn't have turned that off. Watch it in here. We'll get a different ARP sound or mode. All right, so let's go in here. Let's do a, what are we? Cutoff sweep. So that's how our sweep sounds right now. Let's go into the sweep rate frequency. So let's go filter here, and let's check the frequency up here and see if we'll get anything different. I'm not hearing much of a difference. Let's crank it up. Oh, why isn't it saving? Interesting. So that's supposed to set the cutoff sweep. Maybe we have to control the depth. Ah, okay, I think it's... So low frequency. So you can see now the cutoff isn't... So it gives you a bit of a way to customize the cutoff, I think. Oops. That's cool. I don't quite understand what exactly I'm doing, to be completely honest with you, but I can get that I'm adjusting how that cutoff frequency knob works with these settings here. So experiment on your own. Feel free to chuck down below if you have a better idea of what is actually happening here than I do. Okay, so obviously if I set it to 0 for the frequency, it makes no difference. But that, if I add some frequency here, and add in the depth here, it gives me a lot of flexibility with that cutoff knob. So for your own usages, experiment and see what you can come up with. That covers the filter section. The envelope section is much more contained. Basically, you don't have your standard. Really, this is an attack, decay, sustain, release envelope, but your controls are a little bit limited. For example, I can only adjust the attack and the release. So, for example, here, let's use the keyboard here. So, if I give it a lot of attack, it's going to take a while for that for the note to reach its maximum volume. Whereas if I have no attack, it kicks in right away. And same for release. So you can see when I let go, it's gone. I drop in some release. It goes out there. So I have that direct control under the attack, decay, sustain, release. What is AHR? I have no attack. I have no clue. Attack, and let's see. So I can control the attack and the release. So let's dial them down to 0. So I crank the attack up. Yeah, all right.
So how does that sound differently than this? Okay, so the sustain drops, where this sustain was just going to stay there till I let go. So that appears to be the difference. So it attacks up and then drops down to a sustain level, then releases. Now the funny thing is I'm not sure where I can actually control the sustain level in here. I don't think I can. I can only have a way to control the attack and the release. So anyways, but then I have the different modes to play around of. What is AR? Attack, release. Interesting. So if I have no attack, it just drops immediately. So I think these different modes are different ways you can control the sustain. I'm guessing that's why they have those three in there, because there isn't a sustain option. Well, you can kind of monkey around of how you want the sustain to work by going through these three modes. Not really intuitive, but I guess it kind of works. Now what I really like is this attack loop. It's quite fun because you can create some really interesting sounds. So basically it's going to keep looping through. But if I drop the attack, or pardon me, if I drop the release to nothing, it is an envelope generator, but it's actually a way to kind of create some pretty glitchy sounds, right? Mix that with your right. Well, that sounds like crap, but none of this sounds good. But you get the idea of some experimentation. I'm sure you could create some really cool stuff with that. Your luck might vary. Hopefully it goes better than my attempt at coming up with something there quickly. Anyways, you get the idea. The other one, is, of course, is just open, which is an open oscillator. You just let it sing. There's no envelope on it at all. It's just going to blast that oscillator with no envelope on it at all. Beyond that, you have, oh god, tremolo. Oh, I should have looked up how to pronounce that. I'm going to get crucified. Tremolo. Give me a sec. I'm actually going to look up how to pronounce that before I get crucified. I already am. Tremolo. Thank you, Google. What did I say before? I don't even know. Tremolo, I think is what I said before. It sounds kind of like a gum or a candy, or maybe, you know what, I bet you some pharmacy is going to steal that pronunciation off me. It sounds like a weight loss drug or something that might give you diabetes. Oh god, what was it? Tremolo? That's, I believe, what it is. Okay, so under the envelope generator, you can control the tremolo, which can't, oh god. Instructions are, there goes the instructions. Alright, whatever, it's okay. Let's see. Let's get a sound going here. That's interesting. Give me put on the ARP. Well, it's not put on the ARP. Let's just blast this open and see what the tremolo does. So you get that vibration in the sound, and the frequency of it. So you can add that to your envelope too. So let's see. So we want to get that wah-wah effect through the tremolo, I believe it is. I'm useless with pronunciation. Anyways, that is the envelopes. Now let's take a look at the effects next. Oh god, you can tell I've been doing this for a couple hours. I'm starting to get sloppy and punch drunk. All right, cool. So the effects are are much more straightforward. So basically, it's going to be the same for all of them pretty much, right? We're not going to have to go into many things here. So let's just let's get something a little bit more regular because we've gone a little weird through our settings here so far. Let's reset it and just get our basic wave back here. All right, saw wave. Cool. All right, so basically you go into your mod effects, your delay effects, your reverb effects, pick an effect, and the nice thing is you can set all these, so you don't, it's not like you can only have one effect active each side. You can actually have 3 effects active under each of these 3 areas. So for example, if I want a chorus and I also want to throw a stereo delay on it, and add a reverb, I can add all those in. But under each of these effects, well, there you go. You can see how you can grab your effects there. You basically have your time. So if you don't apply any time, and doesn't matter if you don't have any depth to the effect. So the depth I like to think of as the amount of effect I'm putting on. So you can hear I got a very in-depth, a very significant chorus going on, but no time, right? So the time is almost like so you can use those 2 dials. That sounds awful, but you can use those 2 dials to dial in how you want the effect to sound. Now beyond those basic options, you have basically you can control the dry and wet mix. So under these advanced options here, so if I hold down mod, yeah, and it's only gonna, oh come on. So it's interesting. I was wondering why it wasn't working. Is it says in the manual, I hold this down and move this one. Well, that's supposed to control the wet and dry, but I guess there's no wet and dry on the chorus. Maybe not on these mod ones. But under the delay, if I hold down this, you can see. I can adjust the wet and dryness of the delays. Oh, Jesus. And make it awfully sound. And yeah, so you can see the delays. If I hold down delay and move B, not B, I can control the wet and dry of those. Can I do it for the reverbs? Not the reverb. It appears just the delay gives you that option. Let's see, maybe we'll try a couple of the other reverbs. Oh yeah, so it depends on the effect. So if you hold down the button, for example, what was it? The Hull one, I don't think gives you. Oh, it does. Okay, so maybe it's just the mods that don't give you the wet dry option. Just the reverbs and the delays. Yeah, but that's basically it for your basic functionality on this thing, for the oscillator, the filter. What the hell is that? The filter, the envelope generator, and the effects. So we'll take a look at the more advanced functionality next here. All right, one more thing before we get into the advanced I forgot is you've seen me play with this throughout the tutorial so far, but the ARP, or the arpeggiator. So you can see the first thing I do is if I hold it down, I can cause it to latch, which is handy. And the other thing you can do is if you want to change the ARP type, you hold down ARP. And you can change how it sounds very easily that way. Now also under the ARP, you can have it your typical up, down, up, and then back down. Oh, sorry, it's hard. Sorry, I gotta kind of tweak my arm a funny way to show you. Down and up, and a continuous, So you have a whole bunch of different ways to make the ARP sound through just these things here. And also changing the type here. Whole ton of them. So it's a pretty powerful arpeggiator. Now beyond that, how many notes it will go up and down or whatnot. And also the tempo. Sorry, let me switch hands. So, oops, I've unlatched it. So there's the notes and the speed, the tempo. So there's the ARP. Pretty straightforward, but very, very powerful, and a ton of options on it for, especially for the price of this. I've said that too many times, but you know, I was rather shocked of how powerful the arpeggiator is on this thing. Alrighty, to end this video, or the last thing I want to walk through is some of the, I'm going to call it the advanced features, which is basically the major thing it's going to be is the global parameters. So you can see the menu of global parameters right there in the manual. But let's go ahead and enable the global parameters menu. So in order to do that, when you're powering it on, hold down this reverb button and it will pop in to our global parameters. And there we go. So what is this? This is the input route. So depending on how you're using this thing, you know, by default, and maybe it's going to help you if I show you the manual here, is that you can set basically the input. Is it going to come in before the mods, before the delay, before the reverb, before the master, or after the master? So depending on what you're inputting in here, you can adjust this as you see, oops, as you need to, right? So you just pick your 0 to 4 there. I'm going to keep it 0 because I like the input coming in before everything, so I can use everything on it. But depending on how you're using this thing, you may want to adjust that as you need to there. Alright, input trim. So that's going to be our next one here. Is basically this is going to adjust you know, the input coming in. So I have it set to 6 right now, which I think is the default, but basically you can see here is that if for some reason you need to either tone up, so basically the sound coming in will be adjusted by this setting to, I guess by default they lower it by 6 decibels. You can have it so it just brings things in as it needs to. I've had it at 6 and it hasn't bothered me, so I'm going to keep it there, but you can adjust that as you see fit through this input trim option. What do we have next? So this is the sync out polarity. 0 active high, 1 active low. So the sync out and sync in, I'm guessing will relate, you know, the defaults work fine with the Volcas I've been chucking at it, but I'm guessing maybe different hardware is going to want to have different sync polarity to make it work nicely. So I guess that's one thing you can try if those syncs aren't working for you. I haven't had to mess with that. And then you have your tempo range here. By default it's set to narrow. You can also set it to wide. I don't even know what that does, but if you do and you're looking for that feature, there it is. I am just going to leave it at default. Here is your clock source. So I have it set to auto, and I believe what auto means is basically if I throw in a clock from, you know, a key step or whatever is connected to this via MIDI, it's going to take that. If there's nothing connected to it, it's going to use its onboard clock. Yeah, so I've been using that, and that's been working fine for me. 0, I think, just makes the clock always internal. And then the MIDI short messages. I'm not sure what that is. Things have worked fine if it's set to 1, which is on. So I am not going to mess with that. Maybe I should. I wonder if that is the issue I've been having with Reaper there, where it's been going barfing on me and not shutting up. Maybe I need to play with that to see if it makes a difference there. I should really look up what that means, because maybe that's why I'm having that issue. I don't know, that's just a guess as I look through this here and think. I'll leave it as it is for now, and maybe I'll try that after I finish filming to see if that makes a difference, and if it does, I will let you know. What else do we have here? This is our MIDI route. So by default, it's USB. So basically, you can send in MIDI through either this cable. So this is one thing I also wanted to talk about, is this adapter is from the Zoya, and I believe it's a MIDI C. I think the ones that come with like the circuit and stuff are most of the ones I have are B or A. And so I have tried to find one of these in Canada locally, and I haven't been able to find one anywhere. Luckily enough, I had one that came with the Zoya that was compatible with this thing. So be very careful when this does not come with one of these. So be very careful when you're buying, if you're wanting to hook up traditional MIDI cable into here, that you get the right one. If you get the wrong one, it might not work. But the good news is it will also take a MIDI over USB, and in this case I have it set to 0, so it's set to accept it from both. If I set this to 1, it will only take MIDI over, oh, it's not even going to work now anyways because it's in global parameter mode. But if I set this to 1 and saved it, I don't think the key step would work, because it'd be only listening for MIDI messages on USB. Anyways, there's that one. This one is interesting. This is the MIDI channel, and this one threw me for a loop, because you can see in the manual here, basically 0 is going to be 0 to F is 1 to 16. So I have it set to B, which is, I believe, 12. But you know, if I set this to 0, it's actually channel 1. So that was throwing me off, because I'm like, alright, this is channel 9, and I'm like 10, 11, and you'd laugh at how long it took me to figure it out. I had to save it a couple times. I kept on saving it on C, thinking that was 12, right? But eventually I realized that B was 12, because 0 counts as 1, and all these are like, so if you're trying to set it to MIDI channel 5, you actually have to set it here to channel, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it's not intuitive at all. So just keep that in mind if you're having trouble getting the MIDI channel to work with this thing. Is that is a very confusing setting there. Beyond that, what else do we have? This is the sync in and out. 2-step or 1 every step. I just kept it on the default here, and it's worked just fine. And then the envelope legato, off or on, it is on. And sleep mode, this is imperative. So it was set to be on. So one of the annoying, especially with no saving messages, is if you don't touch this for 15 minutes or something, with sleep mode on, it's going to turn itself off, and you're going to lose everything you were doing on it. So if you're working on something, you have to get up and, you know, who knows, whatever you got to do. Like, you come back, you lose all your work. But if you leave sleep mode off, it's not going to turn off till I pull the power on it, or it runs out, or my power bank here runs out of power. And that's the global parameter messages, you know. So that's really the advanced features on this thing. Like I said, the MIDI gotchas, make sure you do a little research. I'll put in the description below, because I can't remember off the top of my head what specific cable it needs to work with regular MIDI cables. But do be aware of that before you just go buy a mini MIDI cable. It's a specific type required. Also, you know, pairing of other hardware is pretty easy. So basically, with the circuit, you can see here, I smashed the circuit in and went to town with that, and that was great. really basically on the back here, you just route the audio into the input and go nuts. It really works great with the Volcas. You know, you can sync them up the tempo really easy, and also get this thing really brings some extra life in some of that gear with just the effects you can add to some of the Volcas. It really adds to the quality of the sound that comes out of that or your other gear too. But yeah, the other thing I just wanted to cover was the custom oscillators. So it's really quite simple to get those running on here too. It's not too terribly difficult to get going. Yeah, so if you're wondering how I got these custom effects onto the NTS-1, there's this NTS-1 digital library app you can download from Korg's site. It's going to bug me that the driver isn't installed, but I'm going to ignore that because it hasn't been an issue. And you can see these are some of the custom oscillators I found online. And here are some of the custom modulation effects I loaded in. And here's some user delay ones I added in. I don't think I had any reverb ones in, but I'll put some links in the description below where I found a list of free or paid or donation options for these online, and you can go ahead and do what you see fit. There you have it, the Korg NTS-1, the Swiss Army knife of synths. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you got some good value out of there. I feel like that NTS-1 is gonna fit really nicely with this mobile setup I've been working with here for a couple of videos. I think it's gonna be the final little piece that will tie that setup together. I've been having a lot of fun with this silly little setup. It's fun to get in the car and go out. I haven't done it for a bit, so hopefully I'll try to get out this week and get one done. And yeah, anyways, thanks for watching as always. Take care. If you have any questions, chuck them below. Chuck them below when you get a chance. And when I get a chance, I'll try to help you out and answer any questions you may have about this thing. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.